Yo, what's going on, beat making people? You're watching How to Make Beats with DeFaceless PROducer, and in this episode we're gonna cover some basic theory about sound reproduction. So boom. You see, in my opinion, sound is actually amazing. Amazing. In fact, sound is everything, literally. From the things that we see like patterns, to those that we can't see, such as radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays. Most of us, including music producers, don't take the time to really appreciate how amazing this process actually is. Modern recordings are reproductions or representations of what was actually played, as information is lost during the process. That's why you can't really beat live music, in my opinion. When you're recording music, you're taking an acoustic signal and converting it to an electronic signal. Some of you have probably heard people going on about how good analog was and the unique sound it created, and you probably wondered, what's the difference? Well, analog is defined as a continuous signal over time and amplitude, which basically means there's a constant stream of unquantifiable information. Whereas digital is defined as a signal with a finite or discrete amount of values. Basically, this means the flow of information isn't continuous and uses fixed points that are actually the ones in the binary that all digital technology uses. As you know, they use ones and zeros. To put this into context, that means digital signals can only represent analog signals by sampling at these discrete points and then filling in the gaps of missing information, which ultimately means you will lose information. And to exacerbate this problem, signals are often compressed to create smaller file sizes, which means even more information gets lost. So now you know why audiophiles complain about the fidelity of modern digital music. During the reproduction of music, you'll encounter several signal types, and it makes sense to have an understanding of those differences. I'm going to use my little mixing desk to demonstrate where you might encounter these. Voltage-wise, a mic signal is the lowest level signal. Therefore, they need a preamplifier to raise it to the required level. One of the reasons I brought this desk is because it has really good preamps for the price. XDR2s. A lot of high-end studios will have dedicated and expensive preamps that can radically alter the character of the sound of whatever mic is connected. This little electric guitar symbol here indicates this button allows me to use the line inputs as a direct input for instruments. This could be a bass or an electric guitar, for example. These signals also need a preamp to raise them to the required level. Line level signals are the highest before the signal is amplified, and in music production it is usually a 4 dBu rated signal, also known as a professional line level. Once the line level signal is amplified, it transforms into a beautiful butterfly. A beautiful speaker signal. And for this reason, they're a lot higher in voltage because of their amplification. With that said, common sense would tell you that it isn't a good idea to feed an input with a higher voltage than it is expecting. For example, plug in speakers or a line level into a mic line. On a side note, you notice that the inputs indicate that they accept balanced or unbalanced signals. So what does that mean? Basically, unbalanced cables have a signal wire and a ground wire. Now they're prone to picking up interference from other sources such as lights, radio frequencies, especially if the cable is long. Unlike unbalanced cables, which only have one, balanced cables have two signal wires inside, with identical signals. Interference noise gets cancelled out by reversing the polarity of one of the signal wires, causing phase cancellation. But to see the benefit, you need to plug the cable into an input that is able to take balanced connections. It's also worth noting that balanced cables can be used as a stereo connection to carry two unbalanced signals. Does that make sense? I know it can be confusing, but I hope it does. Digital recordings work by sampling the signal at a given rate. The Nyquist theory states that this rate should be at least twice the frequency that you're trying to replicate. For example, the bulk of the human voice falls within the 4 kilohertz range. Hence, phone calls are often sampled at 8 kilohertz. Plus, to save more data, the lower frequencies are sometimes not sampled. When you're on a call, sampling more frequencies, such as a WhatsApp call, I bet you notice the difference in clarity, right? This sampling is done using a process called PCM, or aka postcode modulation, where an analog signal is sampled at uniform intervals and quantized to the nearest value of the original, utilizing a set amount of levels relative to the amplitude. So, to put that in plain English, if we go back to this image here, the vertical lines represent the amplitude or the volume. When the samples are taken, they are basically snapped to these lines. So even if the signal falls in between those lines, the process of quantization will snap the samples, the blue dots, to one of these lines like, that's close enough, just put it there. In fact, if you've made beats before, you might have an idea that this is how quantization works in your music software, whereby based on your chosen value, such as a quarter note, the software says, okay, this is the grid. If the notes you've played fall outside the grid lines, then I'm going to snap them to the closest line. Hence why quantization can sometimes get it wrong and F your shit up. And also, you can make your music sound mechanical and unnatural when everything is perfectly bang on the beat. Anyway, more common sample rates are 44.1 kilohertz or 48 kilohertz for video audio. Now, this figure refers to the samples taken per second. Thus, 44.1 kilohertz means 44,100 samples are taken every single second. In fact, in some software, you can increase the resolution to zoom into these individual snapshots and you will see the dots. The bit depth is essentially the resolution of the sample. For example, how detailed is each sample? This is analogous to resolution in digital images, where you often hear people on YouTube comment pages joking that they can count the pixels in the image. To finish, I'm just going to touch upon some of the terminology that you may come across on your journey to becoming a beat making master. DSP equals digital signal processing. And guess what? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically, the discrete data, as we discussed. ITB, in the box. This means creating music using nothing but your computer, aka the box. No outboard gear such as multi-track recorders, reverb units, instrument modules, none of that. DAW. DAW means digital audio workstation, and this refers to your weapon of choice, software-wise, such as FL Studio, Logic Audio, Ableton Live. Over the years, I've used various, such as Cubase, Nuendo, Reason, Pro Tools. They all have their similarities, and it's good to know many, but it's also probably better to be a master of at least one. You know the saying, Nick. Jack of all trades, master of none. Anyway, I hope you learned something, and have a good day, motherfuckers. Boom, I'm gone. 1.